The most highly customized Leatherman tool ever used on the Alone Show? You decide. I'm Doug North from Season 12 of the History Channel show Alone. You may have seen my recent video where I showed you my 10 items that I took to South Africa. And it's right there if you haven't. The one thing I couldn't cover on that video was this, my multi-tool. Let's take a look at the base model Leatherman Surge to become familiar with it as we examine the changes that I made on mine. The Surge is one of the larger Leatherman tools with 4 major tools that can be accessed without opening the pliers, of course the pliers, and then additional features that are within both of the handles. The Surge is an attractive model for modifying for a couple of reasons. First, it's a large and robust tool. Second, it's held together with screws that can be accessed. These are T10 security Torx screws. Let's go over a couple of the ground rules when it comes to using a multi-tool on the Alone Show. First, it is permissible to bring a sheath to hold your multi-tool. Likewise, modifications to the tool are allowed, but must be approved by production. Last, if your tool has any additional bits or swappable blades, you have to commit to your selection and use only those. You can't bring any of the additional blades or bits with you on the show. Let's start with the 4 major tools that can be accessed on the Leatherman without opening up the handles. First up, the main knife blade. This is one of only 3 tools on the entire thing that I did not modify. At one point, I did have a aftermarket 3D printed thumb stud in this small slot. I decided I didn't want to keep it in there because it interfered with my use of the knife blade close to the handle. So, first item, main knife blade, unchanged. Next up, let's go directly opposite the main blade and see what we've got there. I decided to custom fit this Nicholson file. Over the years, I've become something of a file snob and just didn't find the option that was included with the tool to be satisfactory. This replaceable file is the option that you could include on the Surge. It has a file on one side and a diamond honed on the other. I just don't find it to be a very effective tool, so I decided to custom make my own file. This is a portion of a Nicholson file that I custom fit to the end so it would lock in, and it still has a file on 3 faces. I had to file in this small finger notch so that this could be deployed like so. Flipping to the other side of the tool, the next item I put in was this saw blade. This is a saw blade out of a different Leatherman model called the Mutt. The only other option for a saw blade on the Surge is the swappable blade that would go in the same slot as the file. As you can see, my blade is considerably longer than the interchangeable blade. Not only that, it's more durable when it's in one of the dedicated slots as opposed to the swappable slot, which we'll get to next. This modification and several others that you're going to see along the way were inspired by my friend Juania Thibault of Season 6 of Alone and Alone Frozen, and a collaboration that she did with her friend Rich Plantinga. So credit where credit is due on those. It's time to talk about the swappable tool holder that comes on the Leatherman Surge. This is a fairly recent innovation and a really great design feature that they've added. This holder right here allows you to remove and insert various types of tools that are typically found on jigsaws. So if you slide this piece open, you can then remove this jigsaw type blade. This is what's known as a T-shape type shank for jigsaw blades. This allows you to not only use the 2 different tools that come with the Leatherman Surge, but also any other jigsaw blade that you're able to find, just so long as it's not too long for the tool to close again. You're able to put in almost any type of jigsaw blade. I decided to use this for an entirely different purpose. I've wanted some means of creating large holes. So something that could be used to bore a large hole and then perhaps even peg that hole together as a means of fastening wood elements together, creating hinge type elements. My first solution to this was to modify a 5/8 inch auger bit that would fit into this slot and could be used for drilling large holes. Now, it's not meant to be used in this tool. The swappable tool holder isn't meant to take a lot of torque. And if I were to try to use this tool while in the Leatherman, I would simply end up destroying the holder in short order. So the idea would be that you would remove this at some point and then make a more suitable handle in which to hold the tool and to use it. In the case of this large auger bit, what I did in the past was found a very crooked stick and made a brace and bit type of tool. What I decided to go with in South Africa was this much smaller, old school type of drill bit. And the idea for this one would be to remove it from the tool and mount it into a shaft like a bow drill spindle, and then use the reciprocating motion of a bow drill to create rotating motion for the drill bit in order to drill holes that are about 3/8 of an inch thick. The bow drill method of drilling holes was how the ancient Egyptians did it, and I thought if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. So having covered all of the major tools accessible from the outside, let's take a look at some of the tools contained in one of the handles. Starting on this side, the first item is a wood carving gouge. This is another tool that was inspired by one that I saw on Monia's Leatherman. This tool was formed by shaping one of the large flathead screwdriver blades. I simply used a Dremel tool with a cylindrical grinding bit to create a rounded surface on the inside, and then I rounded off the backside. It's very handy for carving interior surfaces like bowls, spoons, that kind of thing. A very handy item that is a great contribution to the overall tool. Next up, and immediately adjacent to the gouge, we've got a small penknife. This too was formed from one of the large flathead screwdriver blades. Even though the Leatherman has a large knife blade, sometimes it's a bit too much when you're doing small detailed tasks. And I found if I open the tool up like this and choke up on the penknife, it can be ideal for small carving tasks. I can save the larger blade for larger tasks and won't have to sharpen it as often if I spread the cutting tasks between the two. It just made me feel better to have more than one knife blade on the tool. The last tool in this part of the handle is a small pair of scissors. Now these were necessary because I had removed the default scissors from the Leatherman Surge that occupies one of the large spots. These are fine scissors. I just wanted to put something else in that large spot. So I took these scissors off of a Leatherman Wave and installed them into the handle of the Surge. It turns out they need no modification and they work just fine. They're not quite as big as the original, but still perfectly serviceable and very handy for tasks such as cutting fishing line, hair, fingernails, cloth, and any number of tasks where you want a little bit more control than just using a knife blade. Turning our attention to the tools in the other side of the handle, the first item would be this, what I want to call an awl. The Leatherman does come with an awl, or what they call an awl, and we'll look at that in a minute. Unlike the tool that's called an awl on the Leatherman, this is a very sharp spike that can be driven with a lot of force and used for a variety of tasks, piercing or opening up a hole or getting knots undone. Just a very useful, general, pointy tool. This was formed from what was the small flathead screwdriver on the original tool. Like some of the others, this tool was inspired by one that I saw on Monia's Leatherman tool. Right next to that spike tool, we have another tool inspired by one of those that I saw on Monia's, and this is a small chisel. Again, this has been formed using a spare large flathead screwdriver. It has a bevel going this direction and bevels off to the sides. It can be used for smoothing surfaces, getting down into holes, making square holes, anywhere you might find a standard woodworking chisel helpful. The next tool on this side of the handle is the tool that Leatherman refers to as an awl, but I think of more of as a reamer. As we can see, it has a single bevel on this side, which makes it ideal for rotating within a hole to expand the size of that hole. It also has a small through hole in the side of the blade that allows you to push through something like lace if you're using this to stitch leather. So this is one of only 3 tools on the entire tool that I did not modify, though I did make the edge considerably sharper than the original. The final tool on this handle is a hacksaw blade that I was able to just barely fit in there. Modified the end so that it locks the same as all of the other tools. I needed to include this little fingernail tab so that it could be grabbed when it's inside of the handle. With both a hacksaw blade and a good size file on this tool, it allows me to both cut and shape metal, whether it's something that you have as one of your 10 items that you modify, or if you're lucky enough to find a piece of metal, some sort of trash or debris, that then can be modified into something useful. With all of the large tools covered and all of the smaller tools in the handles covered, you could be forgiven for thinking that we're done here. But there's still a few more things that I added to this. Most noticeable would be these rubberized scales that I added to the outside of the handles. These were simply made with a thin piece of metal, such as copper, that was then coated in several layers of Plasti-Dip. They are really helpful for gaining a grip on the tool, especially in wet conditions. As you can see, my hand reaches around and then my fingertips actually fully clasp this first one and start to touch the second. It really affords a much better grip on the tool and makes it more comfortable. Did you know that the lanyard hole on the Leatherman Surge could be swapped out? I didn't for a long time, but it's true, you can. So you see you got this lanyard thing right here, and if I depress the unlock button and pull that out, that I've got an additional awl-like pick. Not only that, but on the other side, there's another one. Though you can't see a hole for a lanyard on that side, there is another tool stashed within the handle. And I usually need to use this tool to kind of help get that out. There we go. It's exactly the same as the first one, except it doesn't have the lanyard hole. It's sort of shorter. On this one, I've made some modifications. I've made a very small hole, like a needle hole, and then I've scored it above here, so that if I were to break this off, I would have a fully formed needle. One last thing that's worth mentioning at this point is that I took each of these security screws and made a slot above them so that I could use this small pick tool in order to tighten or loosen those screws. In this way, I was able to field maintain the entire Leatherman using only tools that were on the Leatherman. Looking at the original and my modified Leatherman together, let's review the changes. First, we have 3 tools that are unmodified, 4 tools that were inspired by Wonia's Leatherman, an additional 4 from my idiosyncratic brain, 3 taken from aftermarket and spare parts, and 2 pairs of handmade rubberized grips. Well, in the end, I was very satisfied with the final tool. I will let you know that it wasn't cheap, it wasn't easy, and it wasn't inexpensive. If you factor in the cost of the original tool and all of the additional accessories that I added to it, the grand total ends up being well in excess of $300. I had 2 alternatives in mind that I would have used in place of this, neither of which would have required any modifications. If you want to learn more about what those choices were, please let me know down in the comments and maybe I'll make a video for you. Please like, comment, and subscribe. If you are a potential sponsor, hit me up. Until next time, I'm Doug North. Take care.